His dad was actually the tenor that premiered Almaviva in Barboursville. And he's the guy that invented the laryngoscope. So he would look at, like, through people's mouths with like a little mirror, basically like a dentist would, and that's kind of how he saw stuff in the beginning. So that was kind of the beginning of voice science-y things like that. So this is like a picture of what they would do. Yeah. But so, and his sisters was like Pauline Viardot and Maria Malbrán. And this, so they're like super famous people. Anyway. Alright, since more people are here, what time does this class start?
9:25.
Alright, so we're gonna show up on time.
My bad. Construction. I was stuck in a zone of
Yes.
construction.
Sorry. Okay. So,
Who's the silent?
let's start talking about Garcia. So this was the one that was a little bit more science-based, right? We talked about the covers. So what kind of things did he say? Did you find it interesting? Nobody?
I need to open it up to remember.
That's okay.
I remember some things, my reaction being like, that's a really broad statement, or something, like it was just things that I didn't think were true.
Yeah, so it's a little more broad than what we're learning, right? Because we can look at it much more specifically, and we know down the line. So this is like first generation of this stuff, rather than like we're probably like third or fourth now for understanding of how this works. So how many registers did he say that we have? Three. Can we talk about those for a second? So there was chest voice, medium, slash falsetto, right? And then falsetto. So what was up with all of those ones?
Well, we said the name for wrong, so.
Right, for which one?
For falsetto, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, for the medium one. He said nobody called it falsetto anymore. But so he actually says that the medium one is the transition between like chest voice and falsetto, right? So he categorizes registers like that. And if you remember when we went and looked at all the Scott McCoy stuff, he actually used the definition in here that is on page 8. He said a register is a series of consecutive homogeneous sounds produced by one mechanism, differing essentially from another series of sounds, equally homogeneous, produced by another mechanism, whatever modifications of timbre and of strength they may offer. Each of these three registers has its own extent and sonority, which varies according to the sex of the individual and the nature of the organ. And that's basically what we had for our first thing when we were talking about registers. And I think that's really interesting when he's talking about how there's three registers rather than what we know of as two, right? So that's kind of where that comes from. Anything else in this one that was interesting?
He was very definite in where people's ranges were and things like that.
Yeah.
And very passionate about you will ruin this voice if you do this, if you don't start voice lessons.
Right.
You start voice lessons too early.
Yeah. He's kind of got that 1800s megalomania going on, for sure. Good. What did he talk about with the veiled sound versus the bright sound?
The middle voice is veiled and weak.
Okay. And why was it veiled and weak?
The loss of breath energy.
Yeah, so he was talking about how it tends to get really breathy in the middle voice, right? And why would we think that that happens? From what we've studied, rather than what he knows.
Chords are loose.
It's harder to get the chorus.
Yeah, so if we're singing in falsetto, right, and if we're in the lower part of that range, we don't have enough of the TA muscles in it to make it come together and be a stronger voice, right? Does that make sense? Okay, that's why he would say that it sounds veiled, if it doesn't sound, because he wanted it to sound bright all the time, right? Which bright meaning has lots of harmonics in it, is strong up to the singer's formant and things like that, right? He doesn't mean like that so much. Okay. Anything else in this?
by has lots of harmonics, you mean has lots of amplified harmonics?
Amplified, yeah, right, yeah. They're stronger, right? So because when you have the TA dominance, it has a shallower spectral slope, right? So the harmonics are louder through the range.
Low.
Yeah, okay, good. I think that's,
Well, it's interesting how he says that you have to make a choice of either sounding bright or dark. As the other readings, they combine them
right,
in chiaroscuro.
Right, exactly. That's a good, I'm glad you picked up on that. So, but he's talking about, when he talks about veiled or dark, he's talking about the breathy sound,
Okay.
rather than the bright being the connected one.
So he's referring to bright as the chiaroscuro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So he's using different terms, you know, and
Mhm.
something that voice teachers struggle with a lot, and you know, singers too, is like, how do you talk about these things? And we've kind of canonized a lot more about which words we use to describe things, like chiaroscuro or bright dark timbre, something like that. Whereas back then, there would be some guy in Berlin or something talking about veiled tones, which actually meant breathy, where somebody else might be saying something else, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of that, you know, like you've all taken lessons from different teachers, and they'll describe things in different ways, right? And so part of the reason we do this classes is so you can kind of like collectively figure out what they're trying to say with some of that, like if you go across different things, or if you read somebody else talk about different things. Like we can listen to Rockwell Blake talk about something, and we can listen to Pavarotti talk about something, they're talking about the same thing, but they use different words for it, yeah. Cool, alright. I did have one other thing I wanted to ask about. So he has a question, this is at the end, right before we start talking about timbre. It says, can a teacher change at will the pitch of a voice and turn a contralto or mezzo-soprano into a soprano, or raise the pitch of a baritone to that of a tenor? So this is what he ends this chapter talking about, right? And his answer in this little Platonic dialogue was, the experiment has been tried, and when the subject has been young and vigorous, a short success has seemed to justify the attempt, but if not stopped in time, the final result has been the inevitable ruin of the voice, right? So what is he talking about there?
Singing with your true voice.
Yeah, singing with your true voice and not trying to go up a fog or whatever. And so what kind of ways can we fake going up in the
Short
higher
vocal
fog?
tract.
Shorter vocal tract, right?
That little thing behind you.
What was that, Dr. King?
I said check.
Check, yep, that's it. So you know, a lot of this wisdom has been around for a while. We're just talking about it. Okay, so speaking of wisdom, Pierty. How was this one for you guys?
Beautiful.
Beautiful?
I like to talk about compression, breath compression.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? Like how he goes from that way, it kind of like runs everything.
Yeah, like if you have properly compressed air, you can do anything with the voice, which doesn't necessarily, to me, is an if-then statement that I agree with, but I think it's probably true.
Yeah, so he's talking about compression being breath support, right? It's a different word. So all these were written down by this William Earl Brown guy, and then translated from Italian, I'm assuming. So they're like old, he found them in somebody's stuff after they died, and then he wrote them all down, so they kind of came a little bit after. And they're probably really kind of out of context too, you know, which kind of makes things interesting. Cool, so what did he say about dark light tone? You see the pitch, vibration of your voice seems to emanate from the back of your mouth spontaneously, and the resonance of your voice seems to originate in the front of your mouth and your lips. What's he talking about with that?
The sensation of singing, of good singing.
Yeah, so he talks a lot about feeling like your skull resonance, right? Especially in this chiaroscuro chapter.
Yeah.
And that's so that the sensations of the formants ringing in your head, right?
Lamperti's the coup de la glotte guy, right?
I'm not sure
His shtick was
if I remember exactly.
like, he kept talking about, like, if one gets a good stroke of the glottis,
then.
I don't remember exactly. Do you know, Dr. King?
I think that was Garcia.
I think, I don't remember which one was which, sorry.
Well,
But they're one of them. I mean, like, they're two, these are like the guys that everybody tries to quote from, and then they go and ignore a bunch of other stuff they say, right?
whoever it was, they were castigated for that because it was deemed to be a bad thing. And I think it was Garcia and Lamperti was, no, the voice begins with an H or an asterisk. If you're reading between, Lamperti, the voice begins with an H or an asterisk. And Garcia was, no, it's a stroke of the glottis. And it turns out that, however you describe it, Garcia was more right.
Right. But there are some really great things in this book to think about, right? So we talked about focus in the middle of the skull. I love this line, when you can inhale without disturbing this ideal coordination, you are a great artist. That's my good one. Good. And then he quotes some things. All right. Was that interesting to people? To do some of that stuff? So those are the kind of things when we do our final paper. Remember, I wanted you to cite one of these somewhere in it so that you go through and look at some of them. You can cite from the readings that we had, but if you want to be really cool, you can go read some of the other stuff in the book and cite from that, right? Okay. Awesome. Okay, rest of the test back. Nadia and Chelsea and Rhea. Okay. All right, guys, so this is articulation. So, articulators, the human voice is one of the few instruments where the resonator is the articulator and not just the vibrator, right? So we can move our resonator to change all kinds of different things and to articulate it. So we don't just have, like, the way that we hit the string with the violin bow, we can like tap it, or we can play it, or we can hit it with the wood part of the bow, and we can make all these different sounds. Which we can do with our voice, you know, like if we're going to sing breathy or we're going to sing pressed or something like that. But we can also do articulations with our resonator, like the all the consonants, right? Which horn players or violin players don't really do that, you know, they don't like put consonants in their playing. So that's part of the reason why human voices are so cool. And we get the lips, teeth, tongue, and all kinds of more muscles. Alright, so first we're going to talk about the tongue. Let me get my... Alright, so there's 4 parts we're going to want to look at. The superior longitudinal portion, the inferior longitudinal, vertical, and horizontal muscles. And you'll see in here. So this is the dorsum, right? Our tongues are really big in our mouths. They're much larger than you think they are. And you know how everybody says that they like go all the way down here? That's,
They go around, right?
yeah, they don't go like way down your throat, right? It's just up it, but it fills up your mouth. So if you're at rest and you're just sitting there listening to me talk about stupid Garcia or whatever you're thinking, your mouth is full of your tongue, right? You don't have any space in there, and that's how big it is, right? So the dorsum is the blade of the tongue. It's in this part right here. It's the part that we see when we look at it. It's very sensitive with lots of nerves, and it has all the taste buds on there too. It's the main body of the tongue. So I color-coded some of these other ones we want to look at. So the superior longitudinal muscle is this one. You see how it goes front to back? So that part shortens the tip of the dorsum and causes the tongue to curl backward. So that's the muscle that goes like that, right? I bet you Sam Raimi uses plenty of that. Inferior longitudinal muscle shortens the underside of the dorsum and causes the tongue to curl downward. Alright, cool. So there's all kinds of different muscles in here. Inferior and superior together both pulls the tongue backwards to the back of the mouth. Alright. Okay. The vertically positioned in the dorsum, it stiffens the dorsum. So this one, if you want to make your tongue go up, or stiffen it, that's what you do. It makes it harder. So that's this one that runs up and down. You see how they're color coded with the lines that are up here. That's why this one's blue. Horizontal, it flattens the tongue and causes it to curl down here. Right? Yeah. Can you see the little different striations in there? How it kind of goes like this. Yeah. Kind of. Yeah, you can probably see it when it's a little bit more high res, like on your own computer.
It's really interesting to see it from that angle. How it's sort of mushroom.
Yeah, like both of these. And how it sits in there. And like, remember, your teeth are like right here, right? And the top of your mouth can be even right here. Sneaking around. Okay, so the extrinsic muscles of our tongue, these guys. We get our palatal-glossus, this one right here. And it originates at the soft palate and it inserts on the underside of the glossus. So what does that do again? Right.
Lifts the soft palate.
Raises the posterior of the tongue. Back here.
Oh, okay.
And narrows the pharynx. So it makes your throat smaller. If you see, it's really hard to show these muscles. And if you look on that program that I had on Google Drive, right? It's a little bit easier to see some of them, but they make the tongue super, super small. And we'll look at that some more next time when we know all of them. And we can go through and do the dissection thing like we did last time. But so this one just pulls up the back of the tongue and it constricts everything back there. And it ends up lowering the soft palate because it pulls everything down. Constricts it all together, right? Okay, cool. Styloglossus, styloid process back here. It's back behind our ear, our skull. And the posterior of the glossus, right here, kind of by our ear. And this retracts and elevates the back of the tongue, kind of pulling it up like this. Okay. Hyoglossus, it depresses the tongue because we get the hyo down here. We already studied that one, right? Because what else does it do? So hyo is what? Hyoid bone, and glossus is tongue. And so if we stiffen that one, what do we do to the hyoid bone? Yeah, so it's a laryngeal elevator. Awesome. Good. And then the genioglossus, we also talked about this one. This one was on your test, right? Pulls the tongue forward and sticks it out. So there are tons of muscles in the tongue. Yeah. Yep. All right, pharynx and the palates. So we get our alveolar ridge, which is not shown on here, but that's the thing behind the back of your teeth up here in your hard palate, right? So it's the ridge growing your teeth before the top. Can everybody feel it?
Yep.
Okay, great. The best way to do it is to do it in your own mouth. Don't do it in friends, right? Touch yourself, don't touch a friend. Okay. Hard palate is the bony portion of the roof of the mouth, right in there. We all are familiar with that. And we get soft palate and the velum is in the back. And that's the thing that we raise and lower to close our nasal passageway, right?
So so the soft palate and the velum are the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Did you think they were?
Well, I suppose I didn't, because I was thinking about them in terms of maintaining a lifted soft palate and a closed velum, if that makes any sense.
Uh-huh.
But is it that a lifted soft palate is a closed velum?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so closed is when you get the soft palate to meet the top of the back of the
Which
nasal
blocks air from going through the nasal passages.
Yep, exactly. Right. Yep, because it's the doorway between the nasopharynx and the pharynx, right? So the pharynx is down in our mouth and the nasopharynx is up above.
So the nasal passages are blocked when the soft palate is lifted.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it's like it's open. that, it goes. And actually, when you snore, we'll talk about that, but that's, you're pushing air through your soft palate, and you're making it vibrate like your vocal folds, right? That's the Bernoulli effect. Okay, so, focal pillars are these little things. Some people you can see really prominently in the back, but they're just little tissues between the back, in the back of the mouth, so you can see them. That's why they talk about it so much. So in the uvula, that's our little guy back here that hangs down, that's so famous on cartoons. And it actually drips excess mucus from your nose into your throat. So you swallow it. Rather than it like goes all over your mouth, right?
It's your own personal
Okay, and tonsils, we all have either had those out or we still have them. They're back here.
Bye.
So-
Can we talk about the potential pros and cons, if any, of getting your tonsils removed for singers, or is that just maybe like a?
We can talk about it a little bit, but it might be a great question to ask Eric Kowalski when he comes.
Okay.
'Cause he does that for a
we'll
living.
save it for.
Well, we can talk about it too. So it doesn't really, what do you think it would do?
That's what I'm saying, is I think it probably doesn't really do much.
I don't think it does a lot either. I think, so it could, if they're really inflamed, they can be like a mass that's in there, and it might change your resonance a little bit.
For that period of time.
Well, after they're gone, right?
Oh.
Because you're not, it's gonna be like having something in there, and then it's gonna be gone, so the resonance chambers will be different, right?
But the resonance is most likely to change a bunch if they're perpetually inflamed and taking up space in the back of your
Oh yeah, and you'll feel like crap. I mean,
But
that's
if you don't have a
probably-
problem with inflamed tonsils, they're not causing much of a difference anyway.
Right, yeah, that's why you don't take them out. And you're used to singing that way with the tonsils in there anyway.
Change your sensation, but it's probably not gonna change very much about your singing unless you're really sick and inflamed,
Mhm.
and that's causing infections, and
Mhm.
then you can't sing, and blah, 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 and you get better if you get rid of it.
Mhm.
But,
It-
but
yeah.
actually, the sound in the room,
Yeah, I don't think it really changes it that much. But you can also do things like if you had a bad tonsil surgery, which probably never happens, but if they like messed up some other muscle, yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you that it probably never happens because they're really good at them. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the way that they develop them and everything. So like back 60 years ago or something like that, and you want to get your tonsils taken out, it might have been more dangerous than it is now, is what I'm saying. So you could go back and you could read like the Bernard book, which you guys
Oh, yeah,
have to read for some of that stuff, and it might talk about tonsils being totally different,
it's a dense book.
because they really use them, they could really mess something up if they took them out, you know? Okay. But talk to the ENT about it when it comes. Alright, so this is my favorite part of this slide today, okay? So I found this website that has MRIs of all IPA symbols. Some guy at the University of Southern California went and put somebody in an MRI and had them say like different sentences and come up with, you can go and like click on, so let's say we want to look at a plosive. But we're not getting the sound.
This is so much fun. Also, voices not to be honest.
finally, get close.
Okay, anyway, that's a plosive, right? And so we can go, and he's got the little, we've all seen this vowel chart, right? This goes by, so we're gonna have front and close, right? So front meaning where our tongue is, close meaning how high it is, huh?
Close, thank you.
Yeah, close. Not closed necessarily, right? So in IPA, remember I told you this before, they don't actually say closed for a vowel, it's close, okay? And so there's 4 of them, so we get front and back, close and open. Close being open, something like that, right? Okay. And that's how they categorize what sounds we get in all these different parts right here. Have you all seen this graph before? Yes. No? Okay, I think there's one in the quite well. But then, so you can click on them and go, oh, my coach is really wanting me to sing an E vowel. Or like, let's say this is our front close one right here. So if we get, that's what E looks like in the MRI. Do you see how close it is to the top right here?
But the back of the throat, behind the tongue.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I wanna get this. E. I don't know why the sound's not working, sorry guys. But so we get E, right? So now if we wanted to do like the Russian one with the little slash through it, which is a little bit more central. You see the difference?
Tongue's doing a Macarena.
There's a little bit more space in there. Yeah. So I mean, this might not be the best pedagogical tool, but it's very interesting to watch. So here's like a ah.
Whoa. Ah.
So this guy, this isn't opera singing, it's just somebody talking. Okay.
That guy sucks.
He's like, I can tell from this MRI. So we also see, this is the soft palate, right? You see this thing right here?
He's going to business.
See how it closes?
Interesting.
It's like Jabba the Hutt.
Probably not that different from how we all say it.
Probably going down. Okay, so we know, what's the big difference between this E vowel and our ah vowel?
Open throat.
What was that one?
That's ah.
The space was like more in the mouth for the for the E, the space was more behind.
Right. Guys, did you hear that? What, can you repeat that?
I said in the A vowel, the space is more in the mouth, and in the E vowel, the space is more behind the tongue.
Right.
In the nasal, or the pharynx,
Mhm.
and
So if you think, which vowel has the most open throat?
E.
E. Not ah, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
How come? Because the tongue's so far forward.
Comes out of your throat.
Mhm.
Everyone,
Should we watch that again? Just so we can. So this is ah. He sticks his tongue out. Funny too. And then we'll go to E.
And he closes his mouth. E. But he doesn't.
See where the difference is?
E.
And remember, so the resonance is dependent upon where the openings and closings are at the different lengths of tube in our throat, right? So the reason that the formants change is because the opening in E is back here, whereas the opening in ah is up here. That's why the first formant is higher, right?
Can you hear the ooh?
For E.
For ah. The
That's
first one.
that's what I'm asking. Add that part to it.
Yeah, for E, the first formant's lower. Because the bigger tube length is in the back, right? Make sense?
And men use E to track through the passage because it's already turned over acoustically by the time we get to those notes.
Because your harmonic is above
It's so low.
is over the first formant already. Because the first formant's lower, right? But what my point is that you get, the locations of those formants have to do with where the openness is in your throat. And the other one is how open the front of your mouth is, right? So when we looked at this one is just a graph of the two formants, basically, right? So even though they say front and central, back, that one's talking about the first formant. And then the close mid, and open is talking about the second formant.
And that diagonal line on the left is literally the same as what the first formant is doing through those vowels.
Yep. Well, first formant is this one. Yeah. Ooh. Yep. So you can look at this on your free time too. I put the link on that side. But if you want like ooh.
One time.
Okay. So like, so let's look at that contrasted with E, right? So that's oo. Ooh.
Why is the tongue going?
E.
I don't know about this guy.
Okay, so all those vowels come from just where the resonance is. So it doesn't really matter so much if he's singing or just speaking or doesn't know what he's doing necessarily, right? That's what we're doing on the inside, in some respects, right? And any kind of minute change we're doing with the vowel exchange or something like that is just adjusting where our tongue is slightly with a conceptual oral thing so that we can move some of those forms around, right?
Right.
Okay.
Our coaches now who carry that website on their phone. Happy is the coach who knows how that looks,
It's a good thing.
because the guesswork is gone.
Yeah. You don't have to sit there and be like, you know. And you can see all the little differences between the two. And you can look at all the consonants are on there too. And he's got like sentences down here.
Turn that off. What is going on?
She had your dark suit.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
She had a dark suit. And so like we can listen to all those. I wish the audio was working so you could hear it, but kinda cool, huh? Alright.
Don't ask me to carry.
Don't ask me to carry.
I know Ryan all about what we did.
That's what we just looked at. Alright, so our pharynx. We talked about these before, the constrictor muscles, right? So what are those used for?
Swallowing.
Swallowing! Right? Okay, because they constrict and they go down. So you swallow here, swallow here, swallow here, and that's how you get everything to go down, right?
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. And here's your esophagus, right? So your esophagus is where the food goes through, and it's right behind your trachea, where your air goes through, right? Yeah. Okay. Remember, open throat is maximum release of your muscles. Muscles don't open your throat, right? We had that question on the test, and all of you got it right. So, they narrow the pharynx for like belting and high harmonic stuff, and they put that in the McCoy book because people teach like musical theater singers and stuff from these texts, and that's a big thing in Nats now. So that's why it's all in there. But yeah. Ian.
Why is it that when we're singing, at least for me, I feel like maintaining an open throat feels like a muscular effort at times. Like I'm actively doing something to try and maintain an open throat, whereas we agree that it's actually muscles not doing things.
That's a pedagogy question. I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that.
Okay.
Dr. King, do you want to weigh in?
Say it again. I just got-
Why is it that maintaining an open throat oftentimes feels like you're doing something with your muscles, as opposed to what we know physiologically that is the release of those extrinsic muscles?
You mean it feels like to you you're doing something with your muscles?
Yeah.
You're looking at. Yeah.
It could be a lot of things.
Maybe because releasing muscles takes conscious effort.
Yeah. It could also be that you are actually engaging some muscles and you're not actually having them be open the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Interesting.
You know.
Yeah, but to say that anything is like just relax everything and sing is hogwash. You
Right.
can't do that. It's obviously got to be, it's a machine that's got to be turned on properly.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it works
Can't
there,
just relax everything.
right? Because there is tensions in there, right? Because you're having to have all the tension down here, you have to have the tension of the closure here. But what we're talking about with open throat is that you can't actually open your throat with muscles. It stays open. You can constrict it and you can adjust, so say like if we wanted to use our superior constrictor here to make our E vowel have a smaller backspace in it for whatever sound we wanted to get. So say we wanted to belt it up higher and get our harmonics to be higher because we get the smaller space and it still sounds like E, we could do that, right? It's so malleable that it's really hard to talk about all the details of it, right? Yeah. So. Does that answer your question, kind of? Maybe? I don't know. Okay. Good. So stylopharyngeus muscle. inserts in the soft palate up here. So these are other ones besides the swallowing muscles. Lowers the soft palate, narrows the pharynx, and raises the larynx, right? So when you lower your soft palate, that same muscles helps raise your larynx up. Because it's attached to your larynx. Interesting, huh? I'm getting blank stare.
Can you say that again?
One of the muscles that helps open your soft palate up here is attached to your larynx down here. So it can raise your larynx when you open your soft palate.
When you lift your soft palate, is
When
that
you-
opening your soft palate?
When you open your soft palate, sorry, lowers. I got mixed up. Okay, so when you're because it constricts between them, right?
when
So
you
it
lower
lowers your soft palate and
you
raises your
raise
larynx.
Which you would think would be not.
Which would be the other way around, right? Yeah. So that's one of the muscles that's between them. That's not all of them, remember. So the stylopharyngeus muscle raises the larynx. That's over here. Oh, I got two of them on there. Shoot. I meant the palatal one. This one's the palatal
Hey,
pharyngeus.
what did they read related to this about the idea of raising the soft palate or consciously lifting the palate? Have they read anything related to this about that?
No.
No.
No. He talks about it in the chapter a little bit, right? So that raising the soft palate helps. Where am I trying to go with this? So he talks about, remember when we did when you want to raise your soft palate, the reason we talk about that with the yawn is so that we can get the open throat feeling, right? So we'll talk about some more of this when we read some of the Gola Aperta articles, is when we really get into it. But this is just talking about where the muscles are for right now, okay? Let's do that. Okay. So I'll change that. This one's supposed to be palatopharyngeus. Salpingopharyngeus, this is the one that opens your auditory tube, right here. So it helps you equalize pressure. So if you're in an airplane and your ears are feeling like they're gonna pop, that's when you go. You open them up.
What do you do? I just open my jaw. Like,
Yeah.
That's what this is doing.
But so you're flexing that muscle because it opens up your auditory tube so that it equalizes.
That opens them up. Okay.
However that works out. Okay. Soft palate. Back here is raised when we're swallowing, and it helps raise for resonance, right? Because we can get some of that singer's formant when we raise some of that, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about the articles we're going to read for next time. The levator Bailey Palatini, which is right here. We could also see it down here, I think. That's not on that one. Okay. So this inserts in the temporal bone in the skull up here, and then to your auditory tube, and it draws the palate upward and backward, and it's a very small movement. And you go like this. Okay. So raising your soft palate is probably more of a sensation than it's actually a doing of things with muscles that make it go up. Do you know what I mean?
But since the insertion of the muscle is in the temporal lobe,
Mm-hmm.
if you're aiming at the, say, the jawbone,
Mm-hmm.
you're not even in the same zip code.
Right, if you're trying to go like right here, feel that, but it's up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's part of those, the chewing muscles we'll get to too. Okay, and then the tensor Bailey Palatini, that's the one that tenses the soft palate. Flattens and tenses it, so you have to do both of these to get it to close, right? Because otherwise you just close in a little floppy thing that's hanging there. And then we said, so snoring, when you snore, it's by laying down and not having it tensed, and gravity just pulls it open, and then you breathe through your nose, and that's actually why you snore. Interesting. Alright, so jaw muscles. So our jaw chews our food and articulates our speech. That's kind of the purpose of it, right? We don't really use it to like make ourselves look scary like my dogs do. Right? That doesn't really work so much for humans. So we get a couple little points we gotta know. Our choroid process connects the maxillary bone and the zygomatic bone up here. And this is our zygomatic cheekbone. This is our upper jaw. Everybody got where that one is? And then we get the temporal mandibular joint, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's,
Tubular.
yeah, TMJ, right? And the mandibular condyle is the other point here. So there's 2 points of the jawbone that stick up there that have muscles attached to them.
Wait, what's the difference?
One's in the back, one's in the front. So like this is the mandibular condyle, and that's the coronoid process.
Okay, got it, sorry. And the
That's okay.
TMJ, the temporomandibular joint is not,
Condyle.
It's the actual joint.
it's the joint, the whole mechanism, including the top part, the mandibular condyle. Look,
We're gonna watch a video about it. Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
It's a little confusing.
Good, so then the ramus is the posterior edge of the mandible right down here. Okay. Ooh, muscles of the jaw. So the muscles that close our jaw, that elevate it, are really strong. And the ones that open it are really weak, right? That's why if an alligator's attacking you, you can hold its mouth shut and it can't eat you, right? Or my dogs. You can hold their mouth shut, it's really easy. Alright, a lot of these, the muscles of the jaw are often misused in singing because we can physically see them happening, and as opposed to all the feelings that we have in our throats, right? So we can see it when somebody tells you to open your mouth. They think that they're solving your problems if it sounds better or mildly better, but it actually could be making a lot of other problems happen, right? Because you can just see them, so we tend to talk about them a lot in singing. And this is the list of all of them over here. So we get our masseter, our internal pterygoid, temporalis, and that's the ones that close our mouth, right? And jaw depression, that open them is our digastric, which we talked about that one. Mylohyoid, geniohyoid, and the non-hyoid ones is the platysma and the lateral pterygoid. Good, so this is closing the jaw, right? The masseter muscle is the biggest one. It's right here on the side, that's the one we can feel. That's not right there, yeah. It closes the jaw and draws it towards the posterior, so it goes like this. Then we get the internal pterygoid, which is over here. So that's on the inside of your mouth, right? That makes sense? So the masseter is on the outside, pterygoid's on the inside, but it does the same kind of thing. But they're both on the other side. And they attach to the ramus, that's why we need to know what that was. And then we get our temporalis muscle, this guy up here, that's the whole side of our head, right? It makes the jaw bite and snap, so go. And if you put your hands on your head and do that, you can feel it happen. You feel it tense? So interestingly, one of the muscles that makes that happen is attached all the way up to your head up here. Pretty big guy, right? Big guy.
Hey.
Okay, so this is jaw depression, which when it goes down, it opens, right? Digastric muscle, we talked about that one, right? Two bellies. And it's attached to the hyoid bone. So remember, when we open our jaw like that, we can raise our hyoid bone with that muscle, if we do it wrong. Right?
And raising our hyoid means raising our larynx.
Yep, totally, because it's all attached to the hyoid bone, right? Alright. The mylohyoid, we talked about that's the muscular floor of the mouth. We had that one on the other test. So a lot of these get categorized in other sections, right? And our geniohyoid, which we had that one. Good. So this is the non-hyoid jaw depressors. So these ones aren't attached to the hyoid bone. There's only two of them. There's the platysma and the lateral pterygoid, okay? The platysma is this like muscular sheath that goes around out here, and it's what makes you do that.
No.
So that can depress your jaw, right? Because it's attached up there. And it helps dogs do their snarl. And then we get our lateral pterygoid right here. It's our ramus and our pterygoid plate. And that helps the TMJ joint rotate forward like that. So that's the muscle that makes your jaw come out of its socket, right? Yeah. Cool. So this is the TMJ thing. I gotta figure out if I can get the sound to work.
Wait, what?
I'm just gonna stop.
You can do that?
Oh, God.
Ah,
Stop
do it again.
No, it doesn't have to get your finger. It never happens like.
Yeah.
Stop the noises.
The TMJ is essentially the
Alright, so let's watch this little video. This video talks about TMJ. It's what I found instead of having that physical therapist come talk to us. Okay.
The temporomandibular joint, the TMJ, is the joint between the lower jawbone, the mandible, and the temporal bone of the skull. The TMJ is responsible for jaw movement and is the most used joint in the body. The TMJ is essentially the articulation between the condyle of the mandible and the mandibular fossa, the socket in the temporal bone. The unique feature of the TMJ is the articular disc, a flexible and elastic cartilage that serves as a cushion between the two bone surfaces. The disc lacks nerve endings and blood vessels in its center, and therefore is insensitive to pain. Anteriorly, it attaches to lateral pterygoid muscle, a muscle of chewing. Posteriorly, it continues as retrodiscal tissue, fully supplied with blood vessels and nerves. The mandible is the only bone that moves when the mouth opens. The first 20 millimeters opening involves only a rotational movement of the condyle within the socket. For the mouth to open wider, the condyle and the disc have to move out of the socket, forward and down the articular eminence, a convex bone surface located anteriorly to the socket. This movement is called translation. The most common disorder of the TMJ is disc displacement, and in most of the cases, the disc is dislocated anteriorly. As the disc moves forward, the retrodiscal tissue is pulled in between the two bones. This can be very painful as this tissue is fully vascular and innervated, unlike the disc. The forward dislocated disc forms an obstacle for the condyle movement when the mouth is opening. In order to fully open the jaw, the condyle has to jump over the back end of the disc and onto its center. This produces a clicking or popping sound. Upon closing, the condyle slides back out of the disc, hence another click or pop. This condition is called disc displacement with reduction. In later stages of disc dislocation, the condyle stays behind the disc all the time, unable to get back onto the disc. The clicking sound disappears, but mouth opening is limited. This is usually the most symptomatic stage. The jaw is said to be locked as it is unable to open wide. At this stage, the condition is called disc displacement without reduction. Fortunately, in majority of the cases, the condition resolves by itself after some time. This is thanks to a process called natural adaptation of the retrodiscal tissue, which after a while becomes scar tissue and can functionally replace the disc. In fact, it becomes so similar to the disc that it is called a pseudodisc.
So that's TMJ. Yeah.
Yay.
Interesting. Any questions about that?
So do we quit singing now, or should we wait?
Quit singing now. Should wait until you get TMJ. Alright. So subluxation, I think he mentioned this in the video. Right, so that's opening the jaw so wide that the condyle pops out of the TM joint right there, right? So that's when you go over that.
Translation.
You can feel it right there. Can you guys feel it? You have to put your hands here. So, sometimes people use it for singing if they want to have like it's not classical singing, right? You know, Mariah Carey or something like that. I don't know. But it's high likelihood of flexing way too many muscles or raising the larynx, right? Because if we do this, what do we do with all those bones that are attached to the hyoid bone? They all get stretched really far, right? And then we raise our larynx and change our resonance. Yeah, right.
Which doesn't matter if you got a microphone.
Yeah, it could be. You could sound like a different singer, you know? You know, there's a lot of pop singers that do that all the time. That's how I can go and teach. Like, I've got some students I teach that take like guitar lessons from me and they want to learn how to sing and play country songs or something like that. But they end up doing that a lot so that they can hit higher notes and sound, but they sound like, you know, like country singers. Because they're, ah. Cool. Alright, so let's look at the. This is the last thing we'll do today. We'll be done in a little bit. So just watch like how she uses her jaw. Isn't that cool? Nobody else likes it.
Supreme control.
There's a slight re-articulation on the bottom of the jaw every time she reattacks the on. It doesn't seem like a problem at all, but I wonder why that happened. And I've seen other, particularly women, do that, and I wonder why that is.
I don't have a good answer for that, unfortunately. I wish I did, but I don't know. But did you see how, like how, my point was to
It's
see
not very
like how her jaw, it wasn't very open, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't do the extended, right, at all like that. So that was the point of that. Okay, cool?
Neato.
Alright, so I think next time we finish up, yeah, next time we'll do more discussion on the articles. I want you to read the Gola Aperta ones in the Google Drive. So if we're in here, we go to pedagogy discussion, open throat. And there's 4 of them. And those, it's probably like 35 pages for each, just so you know. Yeah, right. So they're a little bit longer, so take the time to have that. Okay. Cool? Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
This goes on this side.
What, have it?
Like when you give us a test.
It's really short and it's
I'm gonna look at it at the end. I get everybody.
Did you give them to me?
Yeah,
I think you did. I just
I
want
gave it last Tuesday.
Are you guys going?
Let me make sure I have it already.
I might
Sorry,
have
Alex.
to,
I'm gonna walk there.
do my portion I work here. I think I'm
Oh
gonna.
my god, but.
Well, figure it out.
I love that she was
Come on.
Yeah.
She does what she needs to do.
What's up, dude?
Did
I
you
think
email them to me, Arlene?
No, I handed it to
You're
you.
looking like very California today. Just the whole,
I just walked out of bed and was like, I'm not gonna try it.
yeah.
Soft bug. Oh, here we go. Okay, great. These jeans are based less.
I know. I think I might go home. I would really.
You guys have found, you know, look at, we're not saying, how do you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I was.
This is 100%. You and two girls.
The first one I think I got around the 98.
I like cats. I can't watch
Look
it.
at
It makes me so uncomfortable. Brings her back to bad memories.
No, the quiz last time. The first one you get.
Hey, no.
Good stuff.
Yeah, 55 minutes next to Jason.
Okay, I'll see you soon, dude. You going now?
Yeah, at 12
No, the second
o'clock.
one was through all the muscles.
Just text me where you are.
Hey,
Yeah,
love
so I'm
you.
gonna do those. The fifth one, Tuesdays. Okay, well, I just want to make sure that you look out forward, like, you know, make sure. And like, cause you missed like one class too many too, so I feel like, yeah, great for the attendance, and so I just wanna, make sure that we're like, and if you need anything, for other things, then just let me know. I was like, that's my job. Yeah, of course. Okay, awesome. Okay. This is what I'm talking about.
Thanks, man.
This is more work than we did our entire year in Italian class. What are you watching?
Our movie.
What is this?
Our movie.
Movie.
For Christina. The movie that Christina made.
I can't. It's porno. I keep waiting for you guys to take your clothes off.
Did you guys just do it on one?
And I can't wait for something like that. It's not gonna. Who did you do it with?
Kendall and Lydia.
Yeah, I did.
Did you just do it in one continuous take?
No. It's like, we made like a movie.
Yeah, but how do you pause when you do it on the
So who's got the attendance sheet?
I'm just
I
gonna
just-
edit it. I do, I have it.
Did I just edit them together?
How do you do that?
iMovie?
I do
Not that.
Movie Maker. Windows Movie Maker.